All right, guys, so we're gonna close the unit this week. So today, Wednesday, we're basically gonna start closing everything up. We're gonna start reviewing. So this is something that we saw a few weeks back. So let's review. From today, I'm gonna review questions 89 through 96. So first thing, 89 is name each polynomial by degrees and number of terms. Okay, so there's gonna be two names. By degrees, I go by the highest exponent. Okay, so in this case, the third. I know I gave you guys a list, right? If you guys copy down your notes, that was on questions 1, like the very, very beginning. I gave you guys a list. So make sure you guys base yourself on that list. According to that list, when it was to the third, right? When it's by exponent to the third, we're gonna call that cubic. Because I gave you guys a list. Remember how on the list, if you go back, it's like linear, quadratic, cubic, quartic. So by degrees is going to be cubic. And then by the number of terms. So I'm going to go, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, terms are those things separated with a plus or minus. So there's 4 terms. And again, I gave you guys a list at the very beginning of the unit. A polynomial that has 4 terms, we're going to call that quadnomial. Again, you should have that at the beginning of this unit. Okay, that's it. By degrees is cubic, by number of terms is quadnomial, so cubic quadnomial. Let's take a look at question number 2. Oh, question number 90, I mean. Question number 90, we're going to simplify each expression. So first of all, let me write everything without parentheses, okay? So I'm going to write my first parentheses. I'm going to go 5v plus 6 plus 3 v to the second. My second parentheses, if there was a plus in between, I would just copy the parentheses as it is. No changing of signs. But because there is a minus, I have to change the sign. So let me write this as a minus 4 minus 5v plus 6v to the second. Okay, notice how I changed the signs of each. If it was a positive 4 or a positive 5, I change it to negative. If it was a negative 6, I change it to positive. And that because of the minus in between the parentheses. If it was a plus, don't change the signs. Okay, so I wrote everything in terms without parentheses. So I'm going to combine like terms. The highest exponent's v to the second. So I'm just looking at 3 plus 6. So that's going to give me 9 v to the second. Let me cross them out so I know I already used it. And then I see 5v minus 5v. That's 0v. One mistake that people do, let me just show you guys a mistake that people do. They just write the v and they say, oh, I'm not going to write a number in front of it. When you do that, you're basically writing 1v. So you're telling me that 5 minus 5 is 1. Okay, so that's wrong. All right, 5v minus 5v is 0v. Just cancel them out. There's no v's. They're gone. Right? Don't just write a v by itself without a number, because that's 1. So like again, 5 minus 5 is not 1. So don't write the v. And then lastly, I see 6 minus 4, so plus 2. That's it. Now, let's take a look at question number 91, right? Multiplication. We learn how to multiply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 7n to all the parentheses. So 7n times 2n will be 14n to the second. Right, 7 times 2, and then n, when it comes to with letters, add the exponents. And then 7n times 6 will be 42n. Now let me distribute the negative 7. Negative 7 times 2 is a negative 14n, and a negative 7 times 6 is a negative 42. combine your like terms. When it comes to highest exponent, we have 14n squared. Let me cross it out. 42 minus 14 is going to give me plus 28n. Let me cross it out. And then a minus 42 at the end. The one thing that might have given you trouble is dividing. And then we started with long division. And I even said the name is called long division. It is going to be long work. That's why it's called long division, right? I'm not teaching you short division, teaching you long division. Let me open up some room over here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to write 7m plus 9. And this is going to divide into 7m to the third plus 37m to the second plus 71m plus 38. Make sure you're not skipping any exponents, neither inside nor outside, right? You're not skipping any exponents. And then I'm just going to look at my first term outside and my first term here. I want to multiply the term on the outside, 7m, to make it 7m to the third. Number-wise, the 7 is already 7, so nothing I can do. Letter-wise, I have to multiply this by m squared, right? Because m squared times 7m gives me 7m to the third. But m squared times 9 will give me plus 9m squared. Okay, so I already multiplied it. Let me subtract those terms. I remember that I mentioned that when you subtract, not when I subtract this, when you subtract polynomials, you switch the signs of the second polynomial. So this is going to be minus 7, this is going to be minus 9. And this first term should always cancel out, right? 7 minus 7 is 0. That's what I want. Now 37 minus 9, that's 28. So I'm going to have 28m squared plus 71m. Notice how I just brought the next term down. All right, so now I'm just looking at 28m squared. Okay, why do I multiply 7m to make it 28m squared? Well, number-wise, I'll multiply by 4, right? Because 7 times 4 is 28. Letter-wise, m, because m times m is 28m squared. So multiply 4m times 7m. That will give me 28m squared. 4m times 9, that gives me plus 36m. I'm going to subtract my polynomials, but I know that I changed the signs of the second one. 28 minus 28 goes away, which is what I wanted. Now 71 minus 36, that's 35. So I'm going to write this as 35m plus 38. Notice how I just brought the next term down. Okay, so I see 35m and I have 7m. For 7m to become 35m, I will have to multiply it by 5, right? Because 7m times 5 is 35m. And then 9 times 5 is 45. Notice how I just multiplied it across like this. Okay, so let me subtract. Change the signs of the second polynomial. 35 minus 35 goes away. 38 minus 45 is a negative 7. I don't have any more terms to bring down. Okay, so my answer does have a remainder. My remainder is going to be a negative 7. I'm going to put a fraction. You guys see where the negative 7 came from. So negative 7, I put a fraction, and under the fraction, I'm going to write 7m plus 9. You guys see where that came from? And that's my answer. I know it's long work, but again, that's why we call it long division. Now, when the number that I'm dividing it by, so my second term, my second polynomial, my second parentheses, the number for the letter is a 1, like which is our case, we can use what we call synthetic division. I cannot use that in 92 because of my parentheses in front of the m is not a 1, right? I can only do that synthetic when the number from the letter is a 1. So I can do that here. I'm just going to write a -3 here. Actually, a +3 here. Let me see. Okay, so instead of a -3, see, it says r -3. Instead of a -3, let me put a +3 here. Notice I switched the sign. And then here I'm going to write the numbers 1, -11, +23, and +13. You guys see where those numbers came from, right? +1, -11, +23, and +13. And I'm going to write a little line at the here. And I'm going to put a little box here at the far right. Whatever I have in that box is my remainder. Hopefully it's a 0. Most of the time, in my case, it's not going to be a 0. So, okay, so what I'm going to do, let me bring down the first number. So it's just the 1. And I'm going to multiply it 1 times 3. I'm going to multiply it always by this number right here. So 1 times 3 is 3, right? So let me just write my result here. Let me combine those two numbers. -11 plus 3 is a -8. All right, -8 times 3 is a -24. And then when I combine those two numbers, 23 minus 24 is a -1. -1 times 3 is a -3. And then my remainder will be 10. Okay, so I got a remainder. Because I was here, I started with r to the third. My answer, I'm going to start with 1 exponent less. So 1 r to the second. Let me write r to the second minus 8r minus 1. Do you guys see where those numbers came from? Again, because my question to begin with had r to the third, my answer is going to start with r to the second. 1 exponent less. So r squared minus 8r minus 1. My remainder is 10, positive 10. So let me write plus 10. I'm going to write it as a fraction. And under the fraction, I'm going to write r minus 3. You can see where that came from. Okay. After we saw this, we learned how to factor. So looking at 94, I'm working up until 96 today. So looking at 94, first thing I remember I said was, let's divide all my numbers by something. Let me factor out something. So I see my numbers, I can divide them by 2. As a matter of fact, because my first number is a negative, I'm going to divide everything by a -2. So I'm going to say -2 is my greatest common factor. If they all had a letter, remove the smallest exponent, right? I cannot remove a letter because the first term doesn't have a letter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the distributive property backwards. So let me divide each number by -2. So basically going to divide by 2 and switch the sign, right? That's how we divide by -2. So I'm going to get 5 plus 5k squared minus 8k to the 9th. I divided everything by a -2. That's it. That's how we factor the common factor out. And then we learn by grouping, right? When there's 4 terms. What I'm going to do, let me take a look only at the first 2 terms. Number-wise, 9 and 21, I can divide each by 3. Letter-wise, I can remove an x squared out. I factor out the smallest exponent, so x squared. So basically, I'm going to do the distributive property backwards. So I'm going to, number-wise, divide everything by 3. Letter-wise, subtract 2 from each exponent. So I know 9 divided by 3 is 3, and then x to the 1. Number-wise, remember I said divide by 3. Letter-wise, subtract 2 from the exponent, and then minus 7, right? 21 divided by 3. On the exponent, because I subtracted 2, is x to the 0, so no x. Okay, now let's take a look at the last 2 terms. 15x plus 35. I'm going to divide both of them by a positive 5, so I'll even put the side. Divide those two, let's divide each by 5. So it's going to give me 3x minus 7. Now my factors, my parentheses need to be identical, which they are. So when I factor this, when I write my answer, one of my parentheses is going to be 3x minus 7, which is the parentheses. The other parenthesis is going to be 3x squared plus 5. You notice that's what I factor out of each. Now, when we type it in, which parentheses comes first, it really doesn't matter. All right, let's take a look at 96, our last question for today. Trinomials, right? There's only 3 terms. So I don't do grouping here. I do what we call the diamond method, or I also call it the X method. I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiplied are equal to 60. You guys can see where the 60 comes from. So multiply equals to 60, but when I add these numbers, it's equal to -16. So I'm going to say I'm dealing with 2 negatives, right? Because when I add equals to negative, when I multiply equals to positive. All right, so let me think of the factors of 60. I'm looking for technically 2 numbers that when I multiply them is equal to 60, and when I add them is equal to 16. So let me think of all the possible products of 60, all the possible multiplications that are equal to 60. I can go 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20. So far, none of these have worked, because remember, I'm looking for numbers that multiplied equal 60, but when I add them, it's equal to 16. All right, so far, none of this have worked. 4 times 15, that one doesn't work either. 6 times 10, oh, let me stop here. 6 times 10, and 6 plus 10, okay. So my numbers are -6, -10. Okay, now because my first number, at the very, very front, my first number is a 1, I go straight to parentheses. When my first number is not a 1, I have to split the middle term. We're going to review that a little bit tomorrow. So, okay, so let's take a look. So I'm going to go straight to parentheses. One of my parentheses is going to finish with a -6. The other one's going to finish with a -10. You can see where I got those from, okay? So one of them finishes with -6. The other one finishes with -10. Now, let me worry about how they each begin. This is m to the 4th. Okay, so I'm just looking at the very, very first term. Let me cut my exponent in half. Okay, so got to think what's the half of 4. So I'm going to think of this as m to the 2nd and m to the 2nd. See how I cut it in half? Okay, so what if it was m to the 6th to begin with? I split it as m to the third, cut it in half. Now, what if it was m to the second? We'll split it as m and m, right? M to the 1, just m and m. Always split it in half. Cut the exponent in half. Okay, that's not bad. Let me zoom out so you guys can see what we did. There you go.